Hello, everyone. This is Dan Hendy from PRPS. I'm also the co-chair of the TRBI. And you are here at 12 Steps to Sober Leisure. A small confession, we didn't start our recording on time, so the first couple of slides will be narrated by me before our presenter, Abigail, will be taking over. But having said that, let's go ahead. The title today is 12 Steps to Sober Leisure with Abigail Bernard, CTRS. A little bit about Abigail, and so this is like her introduction. She's a CTRS. She's worked for over 30 years in addiction treatment and recovery at Confer Park in Glenville, New York. She's the author of 12 Steps to Sober Leisure, and of course, she's a wife, mother, and with a 15-year-old daughter. I feel her pain. And she was very excited to be here giving us her show. New York's a very big state, and oftentimes when people hear you're from New York, they think Times Square and the city, but Abigail is from that part of New York that is just a wide open country and very beautiful. What she hopes you'll get out of this particular recording and presentation is having some fun with a sprinkle of education, a different perspective on the 12 steps, new ways to approach leisure education with people in recovery, information about recovery resources, and therapeutic goals and objectives. And here are the learning objectives for today. You'll learn specific exercises to help reinforce discussion topics. You're going to be able to identify TR objectives achievable within the 12-step program. Participants are going to be able to identify common barriers to healthy leisure, and they will learn about the community recovery resources. So she went into an explanation of where she works in Confer Park, New York. And as you can see from the slides, 225-bed residential substance use disorder rehab facility with 8 units, detox, women's, men's, and the length of stay is anywhere from 14 to 28 days. She's quite proud of the recreation facilities that exist at this Confer Park with an exercise room and a multi-purpose room and a gym. Also, a lecture hall. Here are a sampling of some of the activity programs at Confer Park, participation in recreation programs, the Y12SR yoga of 12-step recovery, leisure education, wellness lectures, special events, and animal assisted programs, therapy dogs. And here are the therapy dogs that visit the center and are very helpful, as you'll learn in another recorded session. And here's where I depart and Abigail takes over.
Relationship with these dogs, and that's a lot of fun to see. I put up the statistics for substance use. We've seen these, many people have seen these over and over, especially now with COVID. These numbers have gone up, so these numbers are a little bit older. But I bring this up to say that out of the 19.7 million people, if not more, that are suffering with substance use, 4 million receive treatment, so that's not a lot. And part of the reason I put this book out there for the public was to hopefully impact the people that don't get to go to treatment. It's my way of providing my recreation therapy to those people who aren't able to come see me or anybody else. And I was able to do that. There was one person in particular, I'll share this little story, who, Ed, noticed that his partner Dale was struggling with his drinking, and he saw my workbook and bought it for him. And Dale wasn't in treatment, didn't have a recreation therapist, but through using my workbook, it helped him to see what changes he needed to make, and he really appreciated the workbook format that was provided for him. So I call it my starfish story because I don't know if anybody's familiar with the starfish story, where somebody's walking down the beach and There's thousands of starfish on the beach, and he's picking them up one by one, throwing them into the ocean. And somebody walks up behind him and says, well, there's just way too many of them. It's not going to make a difference. So he picks one up and he says, well, it makes a difference to this one. And I know I made a difference in his life, and that to me was reward enough. And I actually got to meet him a couple of years later, which was really, really wonderful, and sign his book. So combining the 12 steps and leisure, why does it make sense? For me, it makes perfect sense. So most treatment programs are based on the 12 steps. You'll see the 12 steps written on the group room walls, in handouts, in their treatment packets. Many who come to treatment are already familiar with the 12 steps. I've met a lot of people who, unfortunately, they've relapsed, but fortunately, they are in there, in it again. Sorry, something's popping up on my screen. And we know that the 12 steps is a widely used and successful model for change. The 12 steps has changed millions of people's lives. And this approach helps people understand the steps. So it makes them more relatable. It puts them in different terms. A lot of people struggle with the 12 steps in the terms of powerlessness, will, God, things like that. And it reinforces the importance of leisure in addiction recovery. Back in 2012, I did a survey as a part of our API process. We need to evaluate the programs that we're doing. So I did that, and I conducted a very non-scientific survey of 175 patients who attended a presentation of 12 Steps to Sober Leisure. Had them fill out a questionnaire, had them rank their answers. The responses were really, really positive. I was overwhelmed with how well this was received. Many commented about having a better understanding of the 12 steps as a result, which is huge to me. And increased knowledge of the role in leisure and recovery had the highest average score. And so that's what I was going for. I wanted them to understand how leisure can improve and impact their recovery. So these are the results of that survey. And the questions were, this information was helpful to my recovery. I believe I have more knowledge about sober leisure. I have more knowledge about the 12 steps. I'm more aware of how sober leisure can aid in my recovery. I feel more confident about making sober leisure choices, and I would like more sessions about this topic. So as you can see, a lot of the scores are very above average in all of the categories. So it's a very, very successful program. And if I did the same survey now, I would get the same results. And a few months ago, I started to do the same thing. And again, the results were the same. So what is TR? Anybody who's here who is not in TR, I'm assuming everybody is, but I'm putting this up here because we are also looking for credit from NCTRC. So the therapeutic recreation uses treatment, education, and recreation services to help people with illnesses, disabilities, and other conditions to develop and use their leisure in ways that enhance their health, functional abilities, independence, and quality of life. So using your recreational services in terms of recovery is helping them to enhance their life and improve their quality of life. Some of the TR leisure education objectives addressed with 12 Steps to Sober Leisure. Increase awareness of self in leisure. So identifying what their interests are, their attitudes, past, present, and future leisure participation. Demonstrating an appreciation of leisure and recovery. So identifying the benefits of leisure participation, identifying how leisure is going to help create that balance and help them cope with quote unquote life on life's terms. Increased awareness of personal obstacles to leisure participation in early recovery. So it's helping them to identify some of the things that might be a challenge for them to do these things. And increased knowledge of recreational resources for the recovery community. Even though recovery community centers are popping up, many of them are still unaware. So they're really appreciative to learn of these resources outside of AA and NA meetings. and initiating a leisure discharge plan. At the end of the workbook, there's a page, My Sober Leisure Plan, where they can start to make some plans in different categories. So without further ado, I don't know if you all like that curtain. I wish I had music to go with it. So 12 Steps to Sober Leisure. The subtitle is Reclaiming Contentment, Serenity, and Happiness Through Sober Leisure Activities. And one of the first slides I show is sober fun versus happiness in recovery. And as we know, many people in this world do not understand the difference between fun and happiness. Fun is play, pleasure, gaiety, merriment, source of enjoyment, amusement, to behave playfully, playful, often a noisy activity, and teasing. Happiness is contentedness, joy, delight, and satisfaction. Both fun and happiness are fine, but certainly happiness is the most worth seeking. And we know as therapeutic recreation professionals that has a lot more to do than just having fun. Of course, I want people to learn how to have fun, but I want them to understand how their source of fun is going to contribute to their happiness. And prior to coming to treatment, their source of fun came from their drug and alcohol use, which in turn decreased their level of happiness and satisfaction with life. And I like this meme, the party isn't over, it's just different. So just redefining what fun is. And going, rather than going to Vegas, go see the Grand Canyon, so on and so forth. So let's talk about step one. So as we go through the steps, I'm going to give you the AA version, and then I'm going to give you mine. So the AA version of step one is we admitted we are powerless over alcohol and our lives have become unmanageable. My version, we admitted we are powerless over addiction and our leisure choices have become unhealthy and self-destructive. Now, when I present this first step to my groups, they start to nod their heads and they say, yep, that makes sense. So we start to talk about it. I have this little video. I don't know if it's going to show, so I put the link on there. It's called Nuggets, and my luck with getting this to show has been unsuccessful. So if it doesn't work, we will just move on. But I encourage you to watch it because it has, I think it's going to work. So let's see. Oh, yay. So let's watch this. It's about 5 minutes, but it's a really good description of what addiction kind of looks like. And if you don't, there's no sound, there's no vocals in this. So I'm going to kind of talk a little bit through this. If there's anybody who's seen this before, turn your mic off and just let me know if you've seen this before or not. So he sees that little nugget on the ground and he becomes curious. He's wondering, oh, what is this? Looks weird. And so this would be somebody using a drug or a drink for the first time. And they get that euphoric feeling. Like, wow, that was pretty cool. And they come across another one. And you'll notice landings get a little rougher every time. And you'll also start to notice that that floaty feeling doesn't last as long. So now it's really starting to wear on this little birdie, and the consequences get rougher and rougher for him, but he still continues to use. And this is what addiction looks like, despite all the negative consequences, all the pain, they continue to use. And many will tell you that it's not that they wanted to keep using, they had to. It gets to a point where they need to keep using just to feel some sense of normalcy. And that towards the end, they're not even getting high anymore, much like this guy right here. So yeah, that's a pretty powerful video. If anybody wants to talk about that one. The stages of addiction and their effects on leisure. So the first stage, as we saw in that little nugget video, if we kind of go back to that, is experimentation. So just trying drugs or alcohol for the first time. And there's many reasons people try. So peer pressure, escape from pain, trauma, curiosity. And then use becomes recreational. So it becomes a part of and or enhances a recreational or leisure activity. And then the next stage is becoming problematic. And here it's becoming difficult to relax or have fun without using. So families starting to suffer, job, school, and even starts to suffer because now using's becoming the priority. So it doesn't matter if you're going bowling, it doesn't matter if you're going to the movies. What matters is that you're going to be getting high. And ultimately, people just stop doing those. Say, well, I have everything I need at home. I don't need to go out. And then addiction, that final stage where, again, using is no longer pleasurable. There's nothing recreational or fun about it. And it's become pretty much a full-time job for people to keep it going. And if they're going to do any recreational, they have to quote unquote get right first. They need something in their system because they've become so used to functioning with something in their system, they can't do anything without it. And I created this chart to talk about recovery and the stages of leisure in recovery. It's a little cut off, but the comfort zone has that inability to stop using. Unhealthy leisure choices is what that one says. And using is providing comfort here. It's providing comfort from physical and emotional pain. So a lot of people nowadays, opioid addiction is huge. And when people come off of opiates, they feel horrible. They feel like they're going to die. So they keep using so that they don't feel that sick. And then comes the fear zone, where they're pre-contemplative state of change. ready but afraid to change, afraid to meet new people, and there's that fear of boredom, which we're going to talk about a little later. And then the learning zone, where they're in treatment or they're going to meetings and they're starting to get into their recovery. And this is where we come in as recreation professionals. We can help them with this learning zone and help them explore new leisure activities, help them revisit past leisure activities affected by their use, helping them to find recovery support and either throwing sober events or showing them where to find sober events. And revisiting past leisure affected by use, I wanted to just touch on that really quick. Yesterday, we had our annual Recovery Month art show. And as people were creating their pieces, there were several people who said, wow, I haven't painted in so long. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to paint again. And then we had the conversation about, well, okay, this is something that you can continue doing. And they're like, yes, absolutely, going to do that. And so then the growth zone, having super fun, spending quality time with friends and family, spreading the message of recovery and enjoying a new life without using. And that is the goal. So some of the step 1 activities that you can use to go along with this discussion, just a very simple leisure using versus leisure sober. This could be a list, this could be a drawing, this could be a collage, any way you want to approach that, having them see the difference between leisure using and leisure sober. Another idea is using the stages of leisure in addiction and recovery, and this comes from the Leisure Step Up model from Idle Arbor, and they have 8 stages of leisure in addiction, 8 stages of leisure in recovery. And what I've done is I printed each stage on a separate piece of paper. I shuffle them up, give 8 to half of the group, 8 of the others to the other half of the group, and I have them sort them out and put them in order. And that generates a really good discussion about those stages and kind of where they're at and where they see themselves. And then a leisure lifestyle timeline. Just start, when did you start using and what were some of the effects of your lifestyle as your addiction progressed? And then we get to step 2. The AA version of step 2 is came to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. Came to believe that sober leisure can help restore our physical and psychological well-being. So helping them to understand the benefits of leisure and learning the value. So having them first identify activities that were affected by their use, asking them what do they need from their leisure time. And I always use my own personal example about how leisure balances my life. For example, as maybe you all can relate, during my job, there's a lot of activity, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of me being up and motivating and cheerful and all that kind of good stuff.
I saw that.
And so I explained that in my leisure time, I need to be quiet. I need to relax and to kind of recharge. But then I also explain how on the weekends, I look for that physical outlet. I look for that creative outlet because I love to go hiking and I love photography. So helping them to just demonstrating how that creates that balance in my life. And then helping them to identify leisure as a coping skill and identifying how it will actually help them cope with life on life's terms. And helping them identify that leisure contributes to overall wellness, all 8 components of wellness, and therefore leisure is valuable and necessary. A lot of people will tell me that they don't have time or they have more important things to do, which they do. They have a lot of important things that they have to get either caught up on or get back on track with, but helping them to identify that leisure is an important part of helping them to do that is key. Some step 2 activities. Benefits of leisure exercise. I took a brainstorming exercise that I got from another resources. So some of the activities that you're going to see, you've probably seen before. I've just taken them and tweaked them a little bit to kind of bring about what we're talking about. So this benefits of leisure exercise is very simply brainstorming 20 benefits of leisure. The group comes up with that list. And then as a group, we vote on the top 5 that are going to stay on the board. So the top 5 usually winds up being fun, stress management, creativity, or even bonding, avoiding boredom, things like that. So when we come up with that top 5, I ask how many in the group use drugs or alcohol for those benefits. And most people will raise their hand for 4, if not all 5. So then I challenge them with coming up with sober alternatives. What are some sober ways that you can have fun? What are some sober ways that you can relax? So on and so forth. So the benefit of doing this exercise with them is that they create that list. I'm not just handing them a handout with 100 activities that they can do. They're creating it. And as they're creating it, a lot of people are speaking up and saying, oh, yeah, I totally forgot about that. Yeah. Oh, and then there's this, and then there's this. And it becomes a pretty animated discussion. And sometimes I can't write fast enough as they're popping out ideas. So it's really great exercise. 12 Benefits of Leisure. This is where the inspiration for this book came from. So the 12 benefits will be mentioned at the end of this presentation. And this exercise takes those 12 benefits and you take and put an activity with it. So for example, the activity might be fishing. The object of this activity is to prioritize the benefits of that activity based on those 12 benefits, which I thought was really interesting. And then we come to step 3. The AA version is made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood it. My version made a decision to incorporate sober leisure as a part of our new life in sobriety. So here we start to talk about making plans and how they're utilizing their leisure time today. So making plans, making leisure plans in early recovery. So the first step is planning for their current environment. Are they in treatment? Are they in a halfway house? Are they in a community setting? Are they at home? So identifying what they're doing now. And then identifying periods of free time and or trigger times. So for some people, weekends are really challenging, or happy hour time is challenging, or when the kids go to bed, when the kids go to school, or just waking up first thing in the morning, because that's when they're used to using. And identifying leisure opportunities and activities that are readily available, making that list of things that they can do at a moment's notice that don't require any planning. And identifying leisure resources in their community and even in their home. Having them search 12-step related programs. So there's a lot of activities that happen within AA and NA along with recovery community centers. So helping them to find those. And then again, looking up recovery community centers and helping them connect with them. Step 3 activities that we can do here would be a community resource scavenger hunt. You can do this on Google. You can, if you're in the community, you can go out into the community, say, I want you to find the library, I want you to find the museum, so on and so forth. There was a group that actually did this, and there was a woman in the group who didn't know about the library because her addiction just didn't take her there. She didn't have a need to go to the library. So as a result, she saw a Harry Potter poster for a free Harry Potter night. And she was able to take her kids there. So as a result of that exercise, she was able to find a healthy activity to do with her children, which I thought was phenomenal. Leisure resources within my home, very simply, draw a picture of your house and label the activities that you can do in each room of your house. And then leisure resources in my facility. So aside from the recreation department, what are some resources within your facility that you can use? And then coming to step 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Made a searching and fearless inventory of our interests, strengths, and weaknesses in leisure. So helping them to identify some things through leisure inventory. So the first question is, what do you like to do? There's leisure inventories all over the place. So that's a really helpful thing to use here. Asking them, what do you feel confident doing? Do you have specific skills? Maybe they're a musician, maybe they're an athlete, Maybe they have computer skills, which I could have used a few minutes ago. And what makes you feel self-conscious in leisure, and how can you work through that? So also addressing feelings of guilt and shame, because when we start to talk about leisure, they start to recognize how they didn't spend time with family and friends. They also got away from the things that they love to do, and they start to feel really guilty and shameful about that. So addressing those feelings as they come up. So step 4 activities, any leisure interest survey list, anyone will do. There's several out there. I have a few that I use that I can give you information about if you would like that. And then step 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of the impact our unhealthy leisure choices and behaviors had on ourselves and others. So step 5 is all about owning it, owning the choices that they've made. So some of the examples of negative leisure choices and behaviors and the impact that they have on an individual, obviously substance abuse, negative thinking, poor dietary choices. A lot of people don't eat at all. Lack of exercise, definitely not enough sleep, poor stress management, self-abuse, and dangerous or high-risk activities. And examples of how it affects other people. Of course, substance abuse, we know that it just affects everybody around them. So gossiping, threatening, name-calling, fighting, breaking the law, minor. I don't ask people to confess to anything, really, but just identifying that breaking law affects other people. No family time, no friends, and then criminal activity. So helping them to see that it's not just about them drinking or drugging, that there's choices that go along that affect the people around them. So an activity here would be to have people list significant people in their lives, including their own name, and make that list. Write down what happened to them as a result of their use, and then write down what happened to other people as a result of their use. And then coming to step 6. The AA version is we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. We're entirely ready to correct our defects of leisure. It's time to change your life. So step 6 is all about change, and the key word is ready. So there has to be a readiness when they come to this stage, because they need to be ready to let go of a lot of things. And I just love this meme here. You don't know this new me. I put my pieces back differently. So some barriers to change. So as we all know, change is uncomfortable. And I don't know how many people have my workbook. I hope a couple of you do, but if not, in my workbook, I use an example of just putting your watch on your other wrist and noticing how that feels uncomfortable, and noticing how you really want to put it back on the other wrist. And so I use this analogy with this particular step, and I'll talk about the exercise that I use. But we know that change is uncomfortable. Most people don't like change. And leisure without using seems foreign. Living, breathing, existing without using outside of treatment seems foreign. They feel like the only person in the world that's going through this. So new changes need to be practiced, and I encourage them that while they're with me in treatment, that they start to practice those small changes so that they can carry them with them when they leave. And then we know small changes lead to bigger changes. And also being aware of self-sabotage. So as I mentioned in my chart earlier, the zones of recovery, that first stage, the first zone was the comfort zone, because even though it was unhealthy and chaotic, it was comfortable because that's what they got used to. And as positive as a change as recovery is, it's uncomfortable. And so people will revert back to their old ways because that's what they're used to doing. And I actually had a conversation with somebody yesterday who was really upset and really wanted to go home. And I said, "Where are you going to go?" And they said, "Well, I'll just go back to the streets of Troy." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because it's easier." So to me, I'm like, how can that be easier? But for this person, it's easier to live that lifestyle because then they don't have to feel their feelings. And that's what that person was going through at the moment. So being aware of how these things come up and how they will sabotage their progress. So I'm hoping that individual is still there on Friday. We made a pinky promise. We'll still be there, but we'll see what happens. We'll say a prayer. So step 6 activities. So the changes activities. I've done this before in workshops and I've seen it. I participated in this activity. So this is where you are paired up with somebody and you get to memorize your partner's appearance for about 10, 15 seconds. And then you turn around. And without your partner seeing you, you make 3 changes in your appearance. So you might change your watch, you might take your glasses off, you might pull your arm out of your sleeve or whatever. I always have to preface and tell my folks, and listen, this is a family program, so please keep it G-rated. But they have a lot of fun with it. And so then you turn around and you identify that the changes that you and your partner made. And the important piece, though, is that after everybody's done and the giggling is over, I say, do what you got to do and sit down. And I don't say anything about putting changes back, but 9 times out of 10, that's what they do. And so I will bring that out. I'll ask them with a show of hands, how many of you put your changes back already? And 90% of them will raise their hand, and I'll ask them why. And we'll finally come around to the fact that they were uncomfortable. And so talking about how change is uncomfortable and talking about how for a while in early recovery, you have to learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable until it becomes comfortable. And it eventually does. And the other activity would be going to educating them about the stages of change and discussing where they're at. Then we come to step 7. Humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. Humbly sought guidance about our doubts and fears about sober leisure. So in addition to this change being uncomfortable, there are also some concerns that people have. So some common fears about sober leisure that I've heard over the years: not having anyone to hang out with. And they'll tell you absolutely everybody that they associate with uses. So developing that new peer network, it's going to take some time. So I really encourage them to start going to meetings, start going to sober events and meeting people who are doing the same thing. And that will help them along the way. Not knowing where to go or what to do. So like the woman who didn't know about the library, because the blinders of addiction are on, or they have just lost sight. They can't think of where to go. And then boredom, I have a whole nother slide on boredom, but that's a big one for a lot of people. One of the biggest fears is also that they're just not going to have any fun anymore because their fun was so directly linked to their use. And then not being accepted and feeling embarrassed. Again, there's still so much stigma around drug and alcohol use, and people in recovery are sometimes looked down on, and they're mostly looked down on by their own friends and family. And, that's for a reason. There's been some damage done in those relationships. But helping people to understand addiction, that's one of the biggest challenges that we face. And then feeling selfish. A lot of people will tell me that they don't deserve to take this time for themselves. They've taken away enough time from their family and friends through their addiction. How can they take time away from family and friends to go do something that they like to do? So helping them to understand that it's not selfish to practice self-care through leisure. So boredom. So I tell them that my take on boredom is there's not it's not that there's nothing to do. There's always something to do. It's usually a feeling of I don't know what to do, and it's often associated with a feeling or an emotion. And a lot of people will also talk about just a lack of motivation to do anything. So I help them to try to go beyond that word and see what's really going on. You know, are they anxious about something? Are they depressed about something? Are they lonely? And then tying in leisure to help cope with that feeling. And for some, quote unquote, normal life can seem monotonous or boring. Along with using comes a certain lifestyle, a certain way of living that they're also letting go of. And it seems like um, all I have to do is get up and go to work and go to meetings, and that's it. That seems kind of boring to me. So, stressing the need for sufficiently stimulating leisure activities. And I explained to them, I'm not asking them to go out and find roller coasters to ride. This isn't about adrenaline seeking. This is about finding those leisure activities that they just absolutely love to do. And I'll spend a couple minutes talking about my activity, which is photography. That's the one thing that totally love to do. I get excited about doing it. I can't wait to take my next picture. I can't wait to go to a certain spot and take pictures. So sharing with them what that means for me. And so as a result, some people will share some of their activities. There was actually a study done about this, a study of 365 addicts who completed treatment. Boredom was the number one reason given for relapse, followed by anxiety, loneliness, and anger. And I would challenge that some of that anxiety, loneliness, and anger was labeled boredom. So many have no idea what to do with themselves and they feel lost. So our job as recreation therapists is to help give them some guidance. That's why I talk to them about, you know, their leisure opportunities, the recovery community centers, finding meetings, so on and so forth. So that's what part of what we need to do. So we can also help them develop a new set of leisure pursuits while they're in treatment. My facility, we are overly blessed with what we have available, so they can get into swimming or get back into swimming, get into working out, get into creativity, whatever it is. And when a person is fully engaged in pursuing what he loves to do the most, then substance abuse becomes the boring alternative. So that's our goal, to make their life more fulfilling so that drug and alcohol use becomes the lesser option. I actually had a speaker do a Zoom speaker meeting, and she said, I will go to any lengths not to use, which was really profound for me because in her addiction, she went to any lengths to use. So she reversed it, and it's working for her. Some leisure barriers for the general population. So there's social skill barriers, communication barriers, poor decisions, lack of motivation, time, money, lack of opportunity, lack of ability, poor health, and accessibility. When you add substance use disorder on top of that, you get a few extras. So there's guilt and shame, lack of resources, passive leisure pattern because they've just stopped doing leisure activities, social network of using associates, embarrassment, work addiction. A lot of people will turn to work to fill their time because they're afraid of that downtime. So I caution them that that's a very dangerous place to be. Underdeveloped planning skills, depression, limited practice of sober social interactions. So giving them the opportunity to attend a sober party while in treatment will help with that. And then just poor activity skills. So as you can see, when you add substance use disorder, there's a whole nother category of barriers that kind of get dumped on top of the normal barriers. Step 7, activities that can be done here. What keeps me from having fun? So Jeff Whitman wrote a book. I wish I could remember the title right now, but I will send you the link to that book. But it's a great handout, and it's entitled what keeps me from having fun? It's a whole checklist of different things. I don't have enough time. I'm too stressed out. I have too many responsibilities, so on and so forth. So they get a chance to check off anything that applies to them. And it's a really great conversation starter to talk about how they can start working around some of these sometimes self-imposed barriers. I found a video called Fun in Sobriety. It's about 13 minutes, and again, I'll provide you with the link. And this gentleman is talking about his lived experience about early recovery and how he learned to have fun through hanging out with other people in recovery, but also talks about some of the challenges that people in early recovery face, and in particular, dopamines and brain chemistry, and acknowledging that the brain needs to heal a little bit for this process to happen. And so he talks about it being possible, but he also talks about it being challenging. So he keeps it real. And the first time I showed the video, a lot of people said, thank you. Because again, leisure and recreation in groups and in recovery is not often talked about within a regular setting or even at meetings. So we have a golden opportunity to bring this topic up for them. Oh, so that's the link for the video. I'm sorry, I thought I did not have it there. So that's the link. So I encourage you to look that up and watch that. It's a really great video. And then step 8. Steps 8 and 9 talk about making amends. So the AA version of step 8 has made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. My version made a list of all people we didn't spend leisure time with and became willing to spend more time with them. So we know that substance use addiction is a disease of disconnection. It disconnects them from everybody, disconnects them from themselves as well. So reconnecting through leisure and spending quality times with others is a part of making amends. So it's not just saying I'm sorry, it's also actually showing up and being present. And a significant part of recovery is reconnecting with significant others, as well as establishing new connections with others in recovery. So step 8 activities, very simply, list people that they want to reconnect with. Who in your life do you want to reconnect with? And a lot of people will say their kids, their spouse, their friends, so on and so forth. And then coming to step 9, and I just love this meme. One does not simply make plans with friends on group chat. But step 9, the AA version, is made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. My version, made direct plans with such people to participate in sober leisure activities. So starting to make some plans. And we know that leisure and recreation can help break the ice. A lot of people are going home and having the talk with their family and friends. Yeah, I just got out of rehab. I'm going to make it this time, and I'm really sorry for what I did. But I encourage them to, with these people, find the things that they were doing with them, or just invite somebody out for a cup of coffee, cook a dinner at home, go out and play in the park with the kids, so on and so forth, because through that, they can start to have that conversation, because we know that people are more relaxed at play. And so having them to identify what they used to enjoy doing together, or finding things that they would like to try. And this family day challenge, I actually used this workbook and this program for 6 weeks at a recovery community center in Saratoga Springs called Healing Springs. And I presented my group with a family day challenge. Over the weekend, I challenged them to spend a minimum of 4 hours with their family and spend a maximum of $30. So I didn't want them going out and doing anything elaborate. I just wanted them to spend time with their family. So there was a woman there who came to my group, and she was 8 days sober when she started coming. And so her choice was to get together with her husband, her son and daughter, and they went to the movies, they went to lunch. And when she came back the following week and reported on her day, She said it was a really rewarding day because they hadn't been able to spend that quality time together because of her drinking. But she mentioned how during lunch, they were able to start to have the conversation of how they're going to move forward as a family and support mom in her recovery. They even said, listen, mom, while we're at lunch, we're just going to drink soda and iced tea. We're not going to order any alcohol because we don't want to trigger you. And it was fantastic because they weren't in a therapist office. They weren't in a circle of chairs at an Al-Anon meeting or something. They were at lunch. So it's a great demonstration about how a leisure activity can help bring about that reconnection. And then, of course, getting involved in recovery-oriented activities. So a lot of communities and these recovery community centers offer things for families as well. So when things don't go as planned, so as much as people are willing to reconnect, there may be some people that are not willing to reconnect at this time. There's been some damage done in these relationships. So helping them to acknowledge this and giving them some ideas of what to do. So not everybody's going to be ready to reconnect. Person in early recovery needs to be aware of this and discuss ways to handle it. So some things I help them to keep in mind is to be patient and not expect immediate support and acknowledge that what they're going through is theirs. They don't have to own that. Everybody has their own process of healing. Don't expect to be trusted right away. Some people are understandably going to keep people at arm's length. And don't get defensive and don't argue over history. And inevitably, somebody's going to bring something up from the past. You remember you did this, da 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 da. And as much as possible, I tell them try not to get defensive about it and just keep moving forward. Step 9, activities. So under the list that was made in step 8, list activities that they can do together and have that discussion about family dynamics and the stigma of addiction and some of the challenges that they might be faced with getting back together with family. And a lot of people will say, I have to stay away from my family because a lot of my family uses. And that's just the harsh reality for some people. And so the rooms of AA and NA become their new family. Step 10, the AA version. Continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. My version is continue to take inventory of our leisure choices, and where there was an imbalance, promptly took steps to correct it. So this is all about relapse awareness and catching yourself. So I bring this up with them that there's 3 leisure-specific choices directly related to relapse, and they are isolation, reduction of healthy activities, and an absence of a positive peer network. And this dates back to 1985, so none of this is new. This has been around for a really long time. So helping them to identify their relapse patterns and getting them back on track before they pick up. So helping them to become aware of what choices and behaviors, leisure or otherwise, do you need to be aware of what starts to happen when you slide down that slippery slope to relapse. So for some, it's I stopped going to meetings, I stopped taking my sponsor's call, or I stopped calling my sponsor, I stop going to the gym, I start doing the activities, I start to isolate in my house, things like that. And how will you keep yourself in check? And that's the biggest piece of it, is that they have to keep themselves in check. This step requires some brutal honesty. And I always encourage them to include other people in that process and have other people hold them accountable to help keep this going. So I also came up with this 10-step leisure inventory. So having them start with today's events, what happened today? What did I accomplish today? What did I do for fun? Did I take any time out of my day to do something fun? And what did I do to relax? So helping them to see that fun and relaxation needs to be a part of their day. How did I help others? Because we know that as we help others, we also help ourselves. And then what do I need to do differently tomorrow? Maybe there is something that I missed today that I need to do a little different tomorrow. Maybe I didn't do anything to relax today, and I need to make sure that I do that tomorrow. And step 11, which is, I think, my favorite one. The AA version is sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for the knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. My version, sought through play and recreation to improve our conscious contact with our authentic selves. So asking them the question, when you take away the drugs, the alcohol, the lifestyle, who are you? Because, as I said, everything in their life, including their identity, becomes enmeshed with their use, and they don't know who they are without it. So helping them to come back to who they are. And I use this every time, this little thing from Dr. Phil. The authentic self is the you that can be found at your absolute core. It's the part of you that's not defined by your job or your function or your role. It's the composite of all your unique gifts, skills, abilities, interests, talents, insight, and wisdom. It's all your strengths and values that are uniquely yours and need expression versus what you've been programmed to believe that you are supposed to be and do. It's the you that flourished unself-consciously in those times in your life when you felt happiest and most fulfilled. And I hear it a lot from my patients. They'll say to me, well, what do you expect? I'm an addict. Like they're supposed to be and do certain things because they're an addict. So I challenge that thought for them. I say, but you're not an addict. You're not using. You're a person in recovery. And that has different expectations. So leisure's role in the development of self. So we as recreation professionals know that as we develop as human beings, a lot of our development happens through play and leisure. So we know that we develop physical skills, social skills, emotional skills, and we develop specific interests. And leisure and recreation is a form of self-expression. We become photographers, we become musicians, we become athletes, whatever it is. So identifying which activities help them to express who they are and who is their authentic self. And so there's a couple of other questions that they can be asked. What are some of the things that you love to do that make time stop? What do you find yourself choosing to do if you end up with a spare hour or two or even the whole day to yourself? And then what are your passions? And it's okay if they don't have the answers at the moment, but it's definitely something to help get them thinking. And this is a handout from the Happiness Planner. There's a lot of free resources on that site. And I just love this because it takes away any titles. I am a human being, and I'll read the intro to you. When we consciously acknowledge and accept who we are to our core and what we desire most in the world, we find that we can be more open, honest, and truthful to those we surround ourselves with. Who are you? That is sometimes a really difficult question for many of us to answer. You are on your way, you're on your very own journey to becoming more self-aware, and you deserve to be heard. Fill out these prompts in any way you like. Think about the first thing that comes to mind. So again, I'm not saying I'm an addict or an alcoholic. I'm a human being that loves, wants to, has the goal of, so on and so forth. And every time I've done this handout with my groups, they really, really, really liked it. They really enjoyed doing it. So I really encourage you to take that and use that as well. And I just love this meme. When you recover, and I love that word recover in here, or discover something that nourishes your soul and brings you joy, care enough about yourself to make room for it in your life. And I mean, anybody can relate to, needing to be able to do that for themselves. And then we get to step 12. The AA version of step 12 is having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. We try to carry this message to alcoholics and practice these principles in all of our affairs. And my version, having had an awakening as a result of engaging in sober leisure, we try to carry the message to others seeking recovery and practice sober leisure on a daily basis. So it becomes a way of life. So carrying the message, having fun in recovery, the message is there's a new way to live, to socialize, have fun, And this is carried through sober leisure activities. So this is where we start to talk about the resources for sober leisure, where this message is being carried. And also developing a new identity in recovery with recreation. So they're going from being an addict and alcoholic to being a person in recovery. So what does that look like? You know, and in using recreation as a way to develop that new sense of self. Now, the identity defined is the distinctive character belonging to any given individual or shared by all members of a particular social category or group. The identities of individuals with substance use may have become enmeshed with their substance use and subsequent associations and surroundings. And this information is coming from an article that I gotten a couple of years ago, a guy who did a study of people in recovery in the community and using recreation to develop their new identity. And once I remember the information, I will share that with you. So developing a new recreation identity should be seen as a part of the systematic approach to developing recovery-oriented identity. Recovery community centers help provide sober support as well as opportunities for recreation. And recreation therapists have the opportunity to connect people with these resources. So some resources for sober leisure, in particular in New York. We have Friends of Recovery New York, so they provide trainings, advocacy, so on and so forth. They also have youth clubhouses and recovery community centers. AA and NA, obviously, if anybody's familiar with AA and NA, there are conventions, there are sober picnics, sober dances, alcothons over the holidays, sober holiday parties, so on and so forth. So if you Google AA-related activities, or if you find your local chapter, there should be an events tab where they're doing, our local NA chapter goes camping every year. They go to the Adirondacks. So helping them to find things like that. Active sober community organizations. I don't know if we'll have time to do the video about this, but there's Eric Strode, who started the Phoenix out in, I believe, Colorado, and it's an active sober community. And there's a couple that we have. We have one in Rochester. It's called Recovery Fitness. We're going to talk about that just for a minute. And then there's Spiritual Adrenaline, which is online, but it's also becoming the Phoenix NYC. So they're taking the Phoenix and they're expanding it, which I think is absolutely wonderful. So Recovery Fitness is an active sober community located in Rochester, New York. All their programs are free. The only requirement is that they have 48 hours of continuous sobriety, and they have a full calendar of events and workouts, community activities. So they're doing CrossFit, they're going kayaking, they are doing yoga, they're training for a 5K. And they're also providing support even for their family members that are affected by substance use. And then Spiritual Adrenaline, which is now the Phoenix NYC. The individuals that you see in the top are myself and Tom Shanahan, and then you see Tom with his mom in the middle and his sister Shireen. Tom is a graduate of Conifer Park, so I was very proud to be able to share this with you. He graduated about 10 years ago. And he found through his recovery identity, he found that exercise and nutrition played a huge part in helping him to stay sober. So he developed an online active sober community. He wrote a book called Spiritual Adrenaline. I highly recommend it. I use it in my groups as well. And so the mission of the Phoenix is that it offers free, sober, active community to individuals who suffer from substance use disorder and to those who choose a sober life. Using a peer support model, we help members heal and rebuild their lives while also striving to eliminate stigma around recovery. Together, we rise and recover and live. So there's a great article, the William White Papers. I don't know if anybody's familiar with this, but this is a really great article to use to talk about finding recovery-friendly spaces in local communities and the importance that they have. So the 12 promises of leisure. So I mentioned earlier that this particular session that I went to, the 12 benefits of leisure, helped bring this whole thing about. So I paid homage to those benefits here. So the first benefit, or the first promise, will be freedom. Our leisure choices will no longer be limited by our youth. We will experience freedom to do what we want. So they're no longer chained to their drug and alcohol use. Feeling good. We will want to do things for no other reason than because it makes us feel good inside. And happy. We will experience a sense of well-being and become more happy and satisfied with life. Pleasure. We'll be able to experience pleasure with all of our senses without them being dulled by alcohol and drugs. Play. We will experience once again what it means to play and step away from our ordinary selves. And humor and laughter. Sober leisure will provide many opportunities for humor and laughter. Relax. We will come to experience a sense of calm and peace as we learn to use our leisure time as a way to relax. And then ritual. Just as alcohol and drugs use became a ritual, so will engaging in sober leisure activities. It will become a part of our daily lives. So again, that change that they keep changing and they keep practicing and practicing and practicing, it starts to become a habit. In solitude, we will learn to be comfortable being alone and seek solitude during our leisure time to allow us to reflect. And that's challenging for a lot of people in early recovery, being alone and being quiet, because that means they're alone with their thoughts. So this is a skill that they certainly learn. And then commitment, we will learn to be accountable to ourselves and others as we commit ourselves to participating in sober leisure activities. So when they make plans with somebody, they will actually show up. And self-confidence. As a result of taking healthy risks and trying new activities, we will increase our self-confidence. And the last one is connection. Engaging in sober leisure will help bring about a sense of wholeness, giving new meaning to our lives and help forge a stronger connection to the world around us. So here's a video that I mentioned about Eric Strode. We don't have time to watch the whole thing because I would love to have time to have a chat or question and answer with you. But if you look up Hope on a Mountaintop, you will find this video, and he talks about his process through making this happen. So I'm going to see if I can advance our screen. Oh, there we go. You missed my little origami, but there it is. So thank you for listening. I'm going to stop my, oh wait, I have my contact information. Let me share that with you. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. I have my email there, and then I have my website to the workbook if you would like to look it up and purchase a copy. But I encourage anybody who would like to message me afterwards. I was telling Dan that at the end of these sessions, I'm so used to sticking around and talking to people and chatting. So if you would like to chat with me on Messenger, please find me and message me, and I'll be happy to do that. So I will stop my share now and see if I can see everybody. There we go. I did it.
Thank you, Abigail. Anyone want to comment? Any questions? All right, I'm going to share my screen real quick. And let me finish sharing it. So I want to thank Abigail Bernard for her presentation today. Please remember the code phrase is good fun. Her other email address, her more formal one, but I suggest you probably look her up on the Outlook address. This session, as you may remember, is approved for 1.5 hours. Please go to the link that I put in the chat. For the SurveyMonkey site, it's the same SurveyMonkey that we're going to use for the entire conference. You pull Abigail's session down from the pull down menu and go ahead and complete her evaluation, and also enter that code phrase good fun.